And good evening, everyone. ESS, Empire State Sports, proudly presents the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Rio and Dave Barlett, in a secret location. And Pete Goslaw here. And our special guest tonight, Brad Smith. Brad, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, guys. I've watched this program of yours for a few months, and I've enjoyed it thoroughly. And you're doing a great job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to say one thing before I throw it over to Joey, and that is we're going to hit on something tonight that we've never thought we'd ever talk about, and it has to do with water, which is which is water skiing. So we're going to highlight on that, and but we'll get right into it.
Competitive water skiing.
That's right. Go ahead, Joseph.
Who says this show can't broaden their horizons
That's right.
with the guests we bring on? All right, so Brad, before we dive into that part, we always like to get our people that are watching a chance to find out who they're talking to or who they're listening to. So why don't you give the people a little background of your life? Obviously, people from St. Lawrence Central area that tune into this show quite frequently are going to recognize you immediately, but those others that don't may not. So little synopsis of your life and some things that have impacted you along the way, and sports related especially, and we'll go from there.
Sure, that'd be fine. As you can tell, I'm too tall for my hair, so that tells you, I'm on the older side of things. Joey is also a little bit too tall for his hair. Dave is as well. That's not a bad thing. It's
Mine's
just
going back.
my hair is 5'7" and I'm 5'9", so it's an issue for people. And so I was born in the late 50s and grew up in St. Regis Falls, went to St. Regis Falls Central School. And, as most kids do, about the age of 9 or 10, got kind of interested in sports. And I'll say that was primarily because of a basketball team coached by a guy named Donnie Parks. And Donnie was a St. Regis Falls graduate, came back to St. Regis, a history teacher by training, came back to St. Regis Falls, and within a few years of his coaching, developed a basketball team. And I can still tell you the names of the players that were on that team. There was Bruce Bailey and Mike Bailey, a fellow named Brad Lucas, another kid named Larry Danforth, and a fellow named Mark Peck. And they were in the Valley League. Of course, they were a small school. And you had the Northern League, which was large schools. And at the time, that would have included St. Lawrence Central, it would have, obviously Messina, Ogdensburg. Tupper Lake at that time was a large school. But Donnie was a great coach. He was a great basketball player himself, graduated from St. Regis Falls about 1960. And as I mentioned, came back to St. Regis Falls, came back as a history teacher and developed this basketball team that didn't lose a game. From the 1968-69 season, they went all the way to eventually played Ogdensburg in the crossover and lost to Ogdensburg. And of course, there was no state play at that time, so they didn't continue beyond that. Obviously basketball was a very different game at that time. Clearly no 3-point line, none of that stuff. But Donnie was big on fundamentals and coached a great game, and he was the center of attention. People hadn't seen anything quite like what. To say he was irreverent was being mild. And you're talking about officials, Joe Jakowski. I saw Joe Jakowski officiate, and Minnie Babich and Al Chadwick, and it was a show. And there was no there was no Google machine back at that time. So communities turned out, they showed up at school events. And, at that time, basketball and baseball were king, especially in the small schools. There were a few small schools playing 6-man football, 8-man football. I'm not exactly sure what it was. St. Regis Falls wasn't involved with that. And to go and watch those kids play, and it piqued my interest as a young kid. And then my brother went on to play basketball for Donnie. And it had, from that point going forward, had very good basketball teams. 1974, Donnie Parks, who coached against John Tahanika over at Hubleton. I saw Al Gutterson play in the Hubleton tournaments at Christmas time, and the Valley League was a great thing. And schools used to drive. St. Regis Falls would go to Hammond to play a game on a Tuesday night. It was just a totally different situation than what you see today. And I understand why things had to change a little bit in terms of transportation and that sort of thing. Then in 1974, Donnie Parks left. He wanted to get his administrative certificate, and he left. And a guy who Joey's going to know named Gary South took over St. Regis Falls basketball.
We all do.
Yep.
He was something else. Gary is a class act all the way, a real gentleman, and at the same time he knew his X's and O's, and so he did very well. At the same time, I'll mention this: in Northern New York, there was a young man who came to Potsdam State under Coach Welch named Mike Dean.
Yep.
If you could ever get Mike Dean to come on your show and talk about coming to Northern New York from Stony Brook, he lit the North Country on fire in terms of basketball. And all of a sudden, Jerry Welch had the North Country in the palm of his hand. Not that he didn't, maybe wouldn't have anyway, but Mike Dean, to go over to Potsdam State on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon and watch him put on his show, you couldn't help but be a basketball fan. And so those were great days. Myself, I was a soccer player, and played soccer for St. Regis Falls, and graduated from St. Regis Falls and went to Potsdam College, played a few years of soccer for them under Neil Johnson. And then from there, graduated with a degree in mathematics from Potsdam, and was just about set to go to Flagstaff to an Indian reservation to teach mathematics. And I was over at the university, I was over at Potsdam College, and talking to the first Dr. Foisey. Joey knows the second Dr. Foisey. He probably knows the first Dr. Foisey too.
Yeah, I know them both.
Yeah, you graduated with the second one, I think. And,
Yes.
Hector said to me, well, why don't you come apply at St. Lawrence Central? I think we're going to have a job there. And so I did. And I ended up with that job and spent 35 years at Fraser Falls. When I first got there was a guy named Bob Peckard that was coaching girls soccer. And he knew, as Bob went to Potsdam and he played some soccer at Potsdam. And Bob asked me if I wouldn't help him a little bit with his girls soccer program. And so what we did was, during the summer months over at the Tri-Town Arena, we did indoor soccer with the girls. And these girls were the type of athletes that would win in spite of you. You know, I mean, it didn't take a lot when you're talking Heidi Hazen and Exane McDonald and, Tina Lebo and Beth Kilcoyne. Don Baldwin was a tremendous player. Kathy Cameron. I'm not sure I can remember everybody that was on that team. Beth Demo, God bless her. Beth Demo was there. I guess the one player I remember most from that era was a girl named Lisa Yondo, who is, for my money, she was the best soccer player that ever played at St. Louis Central. She was a midfielder, played center midi, and she was like a second coach on the field. She was just incredible. Her understanding of time and space and where the ball needed to be when was just I've never seen any player do it the way she did. Just a great player. So I did that for a few years with Bob. We played in the arena. We made some PVC goals and played with no goalies. So you had to roll the ball, and we had a few different rules. We changed the rules every once in a while, and it was just whoever could. It was similar to Joey's open gym that he's done for so many years there for kids at Brazier. Just show up if you can, and if you can't, that's fine. And we throw a penny on people, and they learn to play a small game. Soccer basically for me is played in triangles, and the triangles move up and down the field, and they move side to side in the field. And Bob was super successful with those girls, and as I said, I think maybe anybody would have been. They would win in spite of you. I think they were such athletes. I think most of those names I've mentioned are probably in Brazier's Hall of Fame. If they're not, they should be. And so then Bob was kind of ready to be done with soccer. He asked me about it, if I wanted to do it. And at the time I had a couple young kids, and I said, I'll help anybody who wants to do anything at any time. But in terms of the commitment that required, I just wasn't ready for that. So I stepped back from that. Did a few other things in the St. Regis Falls area with Biddy Soccer. And then, I don't know, 2006 it would have been, Randy Roy, who his name's been mentioned on your show. I think he was on your show for the Stanley Cup at Meadowbrook. Randy came to me, and Randy and I and Lynn, my wife, are good friends, and Randy knew I had played some soccer, and said, well, I'm thinking about coaching girls soccer. Could you help me out with that? And so Cindy and I talked about it. Both kids were at Clarkson at that point. And so I said, well, okay, that'll give me something to do. And so we did that. And, we started out in the fall of 2006. August, of course, you're allowed to start your practices. And we had a bunch of sophomores. We had one senior. We might have had two. We had Amanda Felix, I remember, who's a very good player. But we didn't have many seniors. And only a couple of juniors, Nikia Arquette, Shailene Solar, and the rest were all pretty much sophomores. And I still remember this. Rose Ronchetti, who's the section 10 director of soccer, right? She goes to the sectionals for soccer representing section 10 every year. Did us the favor. She told us it was a favor. So I have to assume that it was a favor of scheduling a game with Shay Z. Shay Z was the 2006 Class D champion of New York State. So we went over to Shay Z with our ragtag bunch of sophomores, a few juniors, and a senior, or maybe two, and played them on a Saturday morning for a 10 o'clock game. And the score was 11-0. and it could have been 22-0. And so at the end of the game, Randy called all the girls together. He said, "I want to talk to you a minute." And he said to them, and all credit to Randy, he said, "You've just seen the best. You've seen what it can be. You've seen how it works. And so you've got a decision to make about, we can have a nice little season and play some soccer and you know, have a banquet at the end of the year and mail it in like that." I don't think he used the word mail it in. Randy would never say it quite that way. And the girls all looked at each other and looked back at us and said, "No, we want to do it." He said, "Okay, here we go." And from that point on, it was work, and it was a lot of learning in that first year. And so that's how I ended up in Brazier Soccer. So I'll stop for a minute and see if you got any questions, because I've probably gone on too long.
I got a ton.
Okay. Okay.
Well, my classic Jerry Howerhand yellow. So you won't be able to see it, but this is a list of everybody. Every name I hear, I'll write it down just in case. Mike Dean's been listed. I looked for it when you said his name. He's somebody I'd love to get, and hopefully we can at some point.
Mhm.
Well, Brad, you just mentioned a lot of stuff there. I guess I didn't recall, because I would have been in school at that time. I didn't recall. I obviously remember Bob Pickard, but I didn't remember you helping out with Bob Pickard in the early and mid '80s in soccer at SLC.
Well, that was, again, it was in the summer that we did that program. I didn't, I mean, I'd stop and see the girls play during the year. And I think that, and let me say that too, that's really important, that whether you're a coach or not, especially early in your teaching, go watch kids do what they do. If we go in, when I went to Brazier, Frank Lyon, who was the superintendent who hired me, put all the new hires, and that wasn't just teachers. That was, if he had to hire a new principal, I assume he did it. And if he hired a custodian, if he hired a cafeteria worker, he put you on a bus. Everybody got on the bus at the same time, and they drove you around the Brazier Falls School District. And so that you knew exactly what, this is it. And one of the people that was most impacted by that was Gene Smith, because Gene Smith told me that story, that they did the same thing to her when they hired Gene. Gene Smith was a music teacher and came from Long Island, and she was just, as you can well imagine, it was a different world for Gene. And it was something that Brazier did with all their new hires at that time. Now, I don't know how long it continued after I started at Brazier, but it was a great thing to do with new students. And the other thing Frank really tried to impress on people, he was a great man, Frank Lyon, was come and see kids. Come and see kids outside of the regular school day. And it doesn't matter if you like the game, or if you're really not into going to concerts, or if you're not into going and watching a play, do it. Go and watch them. See them in something that they're doing completely of themselves. And he was right. It pays dividends to young teachers. I would say, go watch kids play. Show up. It means something to those kids to do that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the bus tour around the district. So when COVID hit that initial spring, and we didn't play any spring sports,
Right.
we had to figure out a way to honor our honor our seniors because they weren't getting senior games. And I took Jenna Chamberlain, the girls soccer coach now. She's varsity soccer and basketball now. And Abby Adams, the varsity swim coach who took over for Katie, and my wife, Katie. And we jumped in my car and we went around and dropped off flowers to some of our female athletes that were seniors in the spring. That was Jenna's and Abby's, who didn't grow up here, opportunity to see the district. And I mean, they saw it. We were in Fort Jackson, from Fort Jackson to Helena and all points in between. And they were amazed at, some of the things that you saw, even though they've grown up in the North Country. Our little district is, number one, pretty big, and number two, you reach all sorts of different avenues, I guess is the best way to put it when you're describing our neck of the woods. So, so talking about girls soccer, in fact, I just texted Jenna to find out they played Rushton tonight, and if they win tonight, St. Lawrence Central will have a winning soccer team season for the first time since that team that you coached years ago. They've had a really good year and they have a legitimate chance of playing for the Class C championship, though Rushton and Madrid are very, very good. So it's not going to be easy, but they have a shot. They've beaten Rushton once and lost to Madrid the 2 times they played them, but both by a goal. So it could be pretty interesting. And it is something that I've mentioned to our soccer girls about your team back in 07, 08, whatever the year was that you guys lost. And we didn't lose, you lost in penalty kicks,
right?
Because you have to declare a winner.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that game or that situation that led to losing in penalty kicks in a Class C championship game.
Yeah, and I'll go back to the first year, 06, and again, ragtag bunch of kids, and we didn't win many games that year. We were competitive and got better as the season went along. When the playoffs finally rolled around, we went to Tupper Lake, and so I said, well, Randy, how do we want to do this? We got to go all the way to Tupper Lake. Do you want to get the kids off the bus, in Santa Clara at Hitchhiking Jesus? And because Chris Rose does this, right? If Chris Rose is going to Saranac Lake, he's going to stop in Santa Clara. He's going to get his lacrosse players off the bus. They're going to run around the church, and then they're going to get back on the bus and head to Saranac Lake, because he wants to get rid of the bus legs. And Randy said, no, we're going to leave early. I'll square it with Rose and we'll leave early and we'll get to Tupper Lake early. So we did that. And we got to Tupper Lake early. We took the girls for a little walk around, right? And went down to the field. The field was covered with deer scat. And Tupper Lake was a better team than we were in 2006. No doubt about it. They were better than we were. But this is soccer. And to beat somebody, you can be a lot better than somebody else. And yet you might not win because it's that kind of game. And so we played them close. We had a goal. They had a goal. We scored a goal late. And of course, they're keeping the time on the field, so you don't really know how much time is left. And when that final whistle blew, and we won the game, you would have thought these girls had won the World Cup, and they hadn't won 3 games all year. I don't think. I'm not exactly sure, but they were ecstatic. And of course, we went on. We played Madrid that year. Madrid was very good, and Madrid did beat us in the championship game. Then the next year, 07, that was the year. I think the girls' motto was "Never Settle." Right? They always developed a motto, and they did things together. And that year we had Nakia Arquette, who is a favorite of mine. She and Shailene Solar, and Nakia was like, like Lisa Yondo. She was like another coach on the field, and she gave players so much confidence. We had a scheme where we would divide the field into 3 lanes. And wherever ball side was, we would shift our players to that side and up on a diagonal. And Nakia would always have that fullback on. She played center full. She would always have that fullback, that outside fullback's back. And she would be talking to them going, go get it, get on that girl's shoulder. And she allowed players to be better than they were because they could sneak up on people. And they knew that if they happened to get beat, that Nakia was going to be right there. I don't know if Tim Brown talked about Nakia in softball, but she was a good clutch player in softball too. And she made us better. And so we went through that year, did real well that year. Went and played Madrid again in the championship game, and Madrid had a great team too. Matt, I'm not going to remember his name there, the coach at Madrid.
Matt Daly.
Yes, that's who it was. And he developed great girls and great players, and they beat us that year, and they deserved to win it. They were better than we were, but we were close. And then the last year, we had a crew that they were just a class act. We had Shelby McGraw. We had Ashley Thayer. We had Amanda Law. I think Ashley Thayer. Ashley Thayer is the reason I'm talking to you, right? Because she mentioned me in one of your shows. Amanda Locke. We had Elise Roy. Brittany Crump was our center midi. Sarah Thayer was on that team. Autumn Irwin. And our goalie, who nobody knew was as good as she was Brittany Rotash. We picked Brittany way back the first year we had him. Me and I talked, and we said, well, the most important position on this team is going to be the goalie, because whoever it is going to see a lot of shots. And we said, well, the best athlete we got is Brittany Rotash. And we put her in the net, and she was incredible. She was just incredible. And how hard those girls would play for Randy Roy. They hated to disappoint Randy. I mean, they would, I can remember, my job was kind of when we pulled the girl off the field, sometimes just for a breather, but sometimes because we wanted to tell them something. It was sort of my job to tell them what Randy wanted them to know. And on more than one occasion, I would pull girls off the field and have to get them settled down because they felt like they had disappointed Mr. Roy. They did not want to do that. And, Randy was a great coach. He just phenomenal with the girls. He had coached 7th and 8th grade football and, of course, ice hockey for forever. He and Mick, what a team there. But he hadn't really coached girls, but he was a phys ed teacher, and I have to call him a phys ed teacher. I can't call him a gym teacher, or if he sees this, he'll be really mad if I call him a gym teacher. He did just a great job of those girls, and they loved him. He was the guy as far as they were concerned. So that year you're talking about, 2008, we went through it. I guess Randy would say like a hot knife through butter, and got to the championship game, which originally scheduled, we got snowed out, and coincidentally it happened to be, I think it was like the 20th of October. We got snowed out, couldn't play at Potsdam State. We had to move the game to Canton ATC a couple days later. And we were playing a Brushton team that we had beaten twice and soundly beaten. And that game, I don't think I'm incorrect in saying that Brushton did not get the ball out of their end of the field. But Brushton had a goalie, all credit to Chad Fippen. I think it was Chad Fippen that was their coach at that time.
Yep.
That girl stopped everything. She stood on her head. We ran everything we could. If anything, we were maybe a little too fussy trying to get the perfect shot. We did our little flip where we put Autumn Irwin up front. We put Elise in the back because, Amanda Locke, the underrated Locke, I'll say, Mariana, great player. Not taking anything away from her, but Amanda was top shelf too. She really good player and aggressive. And we put her with Autumn Irwin to try to get something to bounce off the goalie, and we put it in, but didn't happen. Ended 0-0 tie, and we went through 5 PKs and still tied. And then in the second round of penalty kicks, Brushton beat us. And the girls were devastated. It was just, Nakia Arquette had already graduated, came to that game. Shaven Solar came to that game. And they were in tears, and they weren't even on the team anymore. But it meant that much to them. And soccer is that way, right? I mean, in basketball, if you're a lot better than somebody, you're going to win. And I think in baseball, if you're a lot better, you're going to win. Football, I heard Jerry talk about it the other night. A good coach will get his 3 or 4 touchdowns and then play the second string. But soccer, it's different. You could be really good, and it might not happen. And so we tied for the Class C championship, but somebody has to continue, and that's what happened.
Brad, you named Chad Fippen earlier. Chad was a Parishville Hopkinton graduate, coached at Brushton, and then he went over to Salmon River.
Right.
And he's actually a phys ed teacher over there now. I believe, last I knew he was at the Mohawk School, but he might have came over the main campus. But it's funny you brought him up. My brother played soccer and went to college with him, along with Chad Ledoux, who was at North Country Community College. It was probably a blur from all 3 of them, but great athletes are none the same. I just wanted to mention that Chad and Fip know them well.
He was a good coach. I mean, and at the end of the game, he shook our hands, and we shook his hand, and he said, "I can't believe it," and we said, "Well, you got a good goalie. She is," and I don't remember her name. I wish I did. She deserves the credit for that. He was a good coach. He had a game plan and he kind of knew what the story was, and that girl stood up and she was top shelf that day.
Yeah, he coached boys soccer at Salmon River for quite a few years, and actually he's got one hell of a boot on him. He can kick a ball. I've never seen a guy. I mean, he can kick it full length of a field. He was very athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Joe.
That's okay. Well, Brad, before we change gears, it was Hall of Fame weekend this weekend at SLC, and a lot of those girls that you just mentioned got into the Hall of Fame for playing softball in 2000 on the 2008 and 2009 Class C champions that Coach Tim Brown had. So saw Nakia Arquette and saw Ashley and Sarah. Amanda was on that team. A lot of the names that you just mentioned were on those softball teams as well. So those were some pretty good athletic girls that were in the school at that time.
Oh, no doubt about it, Joy. We were blessed with great student athletes, and I mean that in every sense of the world. Those girls worried about their academics. They worried about and they worried about their sport, and you know, they there were times that sometimes there were situations, and they all, when you have a team, and you know, a soccer team's pretty big, a soccer team's 20 students, maybe a little bigger than a basketball team, and sometimes their students don't get along. You know, they might not even like each other outside of, you know, for whatever reasons, teenagers don't like each other. But for that 2 hours, whether it was practice or it was a game, that was my teammate, and I got your back. And yeah, they were great players. I can remember a game where we had a girl that was kind of a spitfire. She had her own mind, and she had a knee issue. She had surgery on her knee, and she wore a brace. And I'm not going to tell you what the person's name was, but just so we were playing Parrishville Hopkins. Jimmy Myers was the soccer official. And one of the Parrishville players pulled a real, not an appropriate move right next to, and so the girl went down. She got back up, and just like you've seen on the U.S., I don't know if it was the Olympic team or it was a U.S. Olympic player. I don't know if it was in the Olympic game, it might have been a college game. This girl walked over to the Parrishville girl, grabbed her by the ponytail, and snapped her to the ground in one move. And Jimmy blew his whistle and said, "My time, my time." And he pulled out the card. We said, "Oh, boys." And I said, "Oh, I hope he saw that whole thing." And sure enough, he did. He carded our player, which she deserved a card, no doubt about it. And then he walked to the Parrishville girl and was carding her. And Evan Harper was the coach at Parrishville at the time, started to give his 2 cents on it. And Jimmy turned right to Evan and said, "Coach, no, you saw what she did. I saw what she did. That's not going to happen." And, you know, from that day forward, Jimmy Myers was always top shelf in my book. He, you know, soccer is maybe a little easier game to officiate than basketball. You know, it's not bang, bang like baseball and football. I don't know what to tell you about football. I maintain that in football, somebody is holding on every play. But soccer's a big game. And so I'm not going to say officiating is easy. Officiating is never easy, but it's a bigger game, so you can see the fouls. And Jimmy was one of the best as far as I'm concerned. Young Jimmy was good. So yeah, they were great girls.
Evan's still coaching. He was just at our place the other night.
Yeah.
I want to move on to the Waters game, but I will say this because I don't even know if I've mentioned this to Pete and Dave because I've been dealing with it now for 2 days, but it's now common knowledge and news around here. The great Mickey Locke is retiring and will not return on the bench this season. Yeah. And I know, Brad, you were around Mickey for a long time. And the reason that this news is just breaking in classic Mickey Locke fashion, he had kind of made up his mind about a month ago, and he did not want to be the center of attention during our Hall of Fame. And that's the way he is. He came in my office Monday morning and told me, never seen Mickey cry before, but he said his time. And so I know word is already getting around town because the kids are freaking out about who their new coach is going to be. I'm freaking out about who their new coach is going to be, but I am sad that that's a legend. That is a New York State legend that's leaving our program. So,
Mickey Locke, he's a family friend, and like you said, Randy and Mickey, if there was ever a dynamic duo, it's them. The kids love them. I mean, you better have a tie when you get on that bus. You better have a tie on, and it was all the way top to bottom. They're top shelf in my book.
Well, I'm sure we could have a whole show where maybe now I can get Mickey to figure out how to get on Zoom, and we'll give him his due, and we'll be able to talk to him on this. But we'll save that for another time. So, Brad, we want to dive into. It's funny I say dive into some water skiing.
Yeah.
And so I was up visiting your place, kind of unannounced, early August. Saw Double Axel. He's a big deal, guys. He has Double Axel come play at his place. No.
It was just they used our venue. That's all they did. But yeah, I know Alex and Rob. Yeah. Frank.
So we're in there and we kind of get rained out and we're in the house, and I see these photos of Brad water skiing, and I was just amazed. And I knew that he did this, but I didn't realize it, I guess, to that level. So that's where we got on this topic, and I found out a little bit about it. And so Brad, talk a little bit about your competitive skiing, water skiing, and what everything that it entails. How much are you practicing? Is there a circuit? Is there tournaments? I have nothing. I have no knowledge of this. So you're about to give three guys here with no clue about water skiing in Northern New York. Give us a little history on this.
The crash course. Okay, so when most people hear about water skiing, they think about getting up behind their uncle's outboard with a pair of boards strapped to their feet, and getting yanked around a lake, and or maybe getting up on various implements as I did when I was a kid, or nowadays it's tubing is all the rage, and they're doing that at about probably maybe 28 or 30 miles an hour. So what's happening when I talk about water skiing, there's a boat path that is marked by buoys. It's a boat path that's about 900 feet long, and the boat travels straight down that line of buoys. And then the skier's job is to negotiate what are known as turn buoys, which are on alternate sides of that center line where that boat is traveling, a distance of 37.5 feet from that center line. And they're doing it, typically men are doing it at 36 miles an hour, unless you're my age, where you're doing it at 34 miles an hour, which is known as girl speed, because women ski at 34 miles an hour until they reach certain ages. And then if you negotiate, there's 6 turn buoys, and if you negotiate all 6 turn buoys, then they shorten the rope. And a full tow line is 75 feet. And then they have various cutoffs of that rope, 15 off, so the rope is 60 feet long. And then 22 off, so the rope is 53 feet long. And then 28 off, so the rope is 47 feet long. And 32 off, and so on and so forth. And I'll just tell you that the world record is a few buoys at 43 off. So the rope is 32 feet long. It's 37 and a half feet out to the buoy. So, and they're doing it at 36 miles an hour, which 36 miles an hour is flying compared to what the average person thinks of for water skiing. And so the way I fell into this is because a good friend, I use three goods because I should have used three goods, by the name of Doug Bernard. Joey knows Doug Bernard. Kind of introduced me to it. And my wife still curses Doug Bernard for this. That's okay. Because she drives the boat for me now, so she must be okay with it, right? And that was the late 80s when I started to do that. I mean, you know, at 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, I skied in my father's arms. And then probably at 6 years old, I was skiing behind a 6-horse Evinrude. And then, you know, from there progressed and just recreationally skied. But then when I started skiing these buoys, it just becomes incredibly addictive. The course always wins. I mean, in that regard, it's like golf, which all of you can relate to. No matter how well you play, oh, I could have been one stroke better, right? And it's sort of the same in water skiing. No matter how many buoys I go around, well, if I had just done this, I could go around one more buoy. Now, in terms of who's doing this, I'll tell you that in Northern New York, within 25-mile radius of me, I can think of probably no less than 6 of these courses that are on water. There's one up by Jake's in Hanawa Falls that I ski. I haven't skied as much lately. I'd like to ski it more. That's Nick Luthhauser's course. And just while I'm talking about Hanawa, if I don't mention that in 2012, Nick Luthhauser was the national men's 2 water ski champion. Now, just think about that for a minute. Water skiing in Northern New York is kind of a cool running situation.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like being a snowmobiler and living in Ecuador. Right? So the guy who is the 2012 national champion lives in the frozen tundra. Nick's an incredible athlete. I don't know if you know Nick. Great hockey player. Outstanding soccer player for Potsdam. Went to Oswego, and he's a industrial, well, what we used to call an industrial arts teacher. Now they're probably called technology teachers. And then a couple other guys right over there in Hanawa, Alex Angelo, who is part of Double Axel, and Rob Zolnar, part of Double Axel. They're water skiers. A number of them over there. The Richardsons over in Ogdensburg on the Oswegatchie had a tournament just in September that I skied in. Outstanding family. Jonathan Murray, who lives Aeon Heating and Cooling there in Potsdam. He's a magnificent water skier. And then right behind Dave, right there in Saranac Lake, is Fogarty's Marine. Terrence Fogarty, he's a water skier. He's also a very accomplished downhill racing skier. So do people do this? Yes, they do it right here in the North Country. I travel to do it. I go to Syracuse and Rochester. On those sites, those are private ponds that I'm skiing in down there in Syracuse and Rochester. People have lakes, I'll say. They refer to them as ponds. They're really not much more than a ditch. They're about, the one in Syracuse is about 1,600 feet long and about maybe 180, 200 feet wide at the most. So it's very, very narrow. And of course you do it to keep the water very, very still. when you're doing it. So, yeah, that's a little bit about it. I don't know
Okay.
if I share, if you allow me to share my screen, I can show you a picture of it. You don't have to do that.
No, whatever you want to do. I didn't have many questions going into this, but I'm going to tell you one thing. I got a few of them.
Okay.
First of all, I've owned a boat. I've owned a couple of them in my day, and they don't. The fastest one I ever had was a Bayliner that went 32 miles an hour with a 90 horse. On water, 32 miles an hour is fast as hell. So I cannot imagine being a skier on the back of that doing 34, 36 miles an hour. That's,
Mhm.
I can speak for the other two. That's totally insane, by the way. Okay.
Well, well, and here's what's going to kill you, because when, like, when people recreational water ski, there's always the big guy, right? And you always wonder if the boat will pull him up.
Hold
And-
on. I got more-
Oh, Dave, don't put your hand up.
I got more stories. Mhm.
Will the boat pull him up, and then if he's, if he can ski a little bit, then maybe when he leans into it and sprays, because it's really all about how big the spray is, right? For the average person, is how big a spray.
Yeah.
And then when he leans into it a little bit, can he stop the boat? Let me tell you about that. These motors are GPS controlled motors. So you pull all you want, the boat's going to pull back. And so this course that's 900 feet long, every time the boat is going to go through that course at 36 miles an hour, it is going to be 16 and 800 seconds every time. You pull as hard as you want, it's going to get there in that amount of time. And so the technology is just incredible. Now, to differentiate, to show that, you can probably tell I'm a math guy a little bit here, but if you go at 34 miles an hour, then it takes 16 and 9,500 seconds to navigate that course. So it's less than 1 second difference, but to me, it's a world. At 36 miles an hour, I'm not going to be anywhere near what I can do at 34 miles an hour. And if you drop it to 32, it makes it even different, but even easier, I'll say. Not that any of it really is easy. So,
Okay, hold on a second.
yeah, okay. All right.
So let's back up a little bit. One of the things that really confused the hell out of me, like you just said it, and you must have one hell of a life insurance policy. Your wife drives the boat?
Yeah, my wife is a driver.
You don't want to upset her at all, do you?
No. And the strange thing is, she can tell me, because it's just, and one of the reasons I do this is because it's a great activity that I can step out of my door and do. It's not golf, golf it's going to take 3-4 hours. It's got to take 3-4 hours to play a game of golf, right? A round of golf. And this, I could do it in about 45 minutes. And years ago, it was a matter of one of my kids skied down to this course. I skied the course, and then my other kid skied back. And it was a family kind of a thing. And so that's why I really love it. That's how I got maybe to have them do it. That was big for me. Yeah, having her drive the boat, that makes it even more special for me. I mean, I go other places, and at a competition, she doesn't drive the boat. She's, obviously you have an impartial person driving the boat and all that sort of thing. And but yeah, I want to make sure the boat is pointed away from me. And I know if it's pointed towards me, I must have done something bad.
Right, yeah.
But it just, final thought here, and I'll let you ask more questions. she can tell me when I'm not skiing well. When we get to the end of the course, if I happen to make it through, or maybe I'll fall or something, and she'll idle back to me and say, okay, so we're gonna ski tonight, or do you just want to go back home and have a glass of wine? Because you're hitting me at the wrong time. And so that makes, she's working the wheel and having to work the wheel when she shouldn't have to work the wheel to keep the boat straight. And yeah, so she's sort of like my confidant. She's my coach. She tells me when I'm screwing up. And
Brad, just to let you know, anybody that's in a relationship with a woman, whether they're married or not, they're gonna tell you when you're doing something wrong anyway. So.
oh, okay. Yeah.
If there's, usually they're either laughing about it or screaming about it. So, but we'll just let that go. Now, I do have to tell you, I do my water skiing history. I'm a pretty big fella now. Well, not when this happened, but many moons ago, and I don't know where David got his experience from, but we had a basketball coach named Herb McLaren, and he has a camp down in Hopkins Point off the St. Lawrence River. And we'd go down there as kids. He'd invite all the coach, all the players and stuff. And to this day in life, I've always had a problem feeling comfortable somebody pulling me or just, I like to fight back. And when I got these skis on and he said, just relax and let the boat pull you. And when it started pulling, I wanted to pull back.
Yeah.
And I got, I think, 4 feet off the dock 3 times. And that was the end of my experience. So that's the end of my water skiing experience right there. So I don't have the temperament for it, I guess.
No,
I don't
okay.
know.
Well, you're welcome anytime here at Lake Azonia. Have Joey bring you up, and
Yeah.
you can have a ride. You can just ride in the boat and watch it, and then we play fair with everybody.
With a cold beverage, I can do that all day long.
We could do a wobbly pop or two at the end of the activity. We can have a wobbly pop or two. Sure.
I was actually quite a good recreational water skier when I was a teenager. Same situation on the St. Lawrence River. I had friends that had camps and boats, and spent a lot of summers with them learning how to water ski. And I had a blast. And it's like we were saying, even at let's just say at 30 miles an hour, when you fall, that's like getting tossed out of a car on the road. I mean, it's not like splash in the water, you're okay. It's like bang, bang, bang on the water, and that hurts.
Yeah. Well, I've had my share of injuries, not as many as Doug Bernard. I broke an eardrum. I snapped an Achilles. But Dougie's had far more injuries than I've had, and so Kathy Bernard's a saint. If you ask Doug, Kathy Bernard's a saint. You're going to get hurt doing it. Although my falls haven't been as I haven't won any awards for my falls. I mean,
Oh, we would. We would. Yeah. Either that or they'd be on YouTube. They'd be on YouTube in a minute. So
I'll tell you what, my spouse is signaling me that why don't we get the wise guys? We get all 3 of them up behind the boat and get a picture. We think that'd be great.
I'll tube, but I'm not doing it.
You'll tube? Okay, you're on. If you'll tube, you're on, and we will play fair.
Oh, yeah, okay. I got one more question, and I'll send it over to Joey. Have you ever barefoot?
I don't barefoot because I'm 63 years old, and Dougie barefoot cost him a whole season. So at this point, I don't want to cost myself a whole season.
Hurts the bottom of the feet, I take it.
It's if you fall, because to barefoot you have to be going a little bit faster, typically 40 miles an hour to barefoot.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
And you fall at 40 miles an hour, there's a limb that might come off.
Brad, if I fall from a standing position, everything's gonna hurt. So, yeah.
Okay.
I'm so glad we did this because
We're way
I
over
love
an
it.
hour.
I love it when we bring somebody on and it gets Pete thinking outside the box
Wow,
because
yeah.
I don't think he was expecting some of the things that I wasn't expecting it. I mean, I had a picture in my mind, but not those numbers. That it is mind boggling what you're accomplishing, Brad, and especially you hate saying this because I'm not that far behind you, but at your age, I mean, to be able to keep doing this and have that passion, the age of 63-year-olds. So now, what are you going to do all winter in preparation for next season? What do we do?
Well,
Regular skiing?
I mean, I will. No, I don't downhill ski, and I'll tell you why. I don't downhill ski because I'd like it. And then I'd end up living in a van at the base of a mountain. And I wouldn't have kids and I wouldn't be married and it would just not be good at all. I would really like that, I think. What I do in the winter, well, actually, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to Florida and I'm going to ski with a pro coach down there. So I'm really, really excited about it because I've never done that. I mean, most people I know that do this have done this with a pro coach. I've never done that. I just learned by talking to other people and like talking to people like Nick Luthauser and going to some of these tournaments and getting people to educate me a little bit. They've had a couple pros come in for clinics. So I'm really looking forward to that. But in a typical winter, I cross country ski and I snowshoe, I ice skate. And every day this boy stretches every day. And it takes about an hour to do my full stretching routine. There's a reason that healthy and wealthy rhyme, you know, and you only get one of these things. So you should take care of it. Obviously I didn't take care of my hair, but like I told you, I grew up in the 70s, 60s, 70s. And so I don't really remember what happened then.
No comment.
Anybody who tells you they do remember, they're lying. They weren't there.
Mhm.
That's the way that works.
Well, Brad, we're running short on time, but I got to say that this was awesome, especially to be able to hear these, to hear some a different sport. We have done over, I think we're over 100 shows. Water skiing hasn't come up once, but it did tonight, and I think you intrigued all three of us with what you said. And if you want to get the three of us, we will have to start at the Riverside.
Yeah.
Well, we can
probably-
finish there.
Probably at 11 o'clock in the morning, and maybe by 5 in the afternoon, Goslav will have enough energy to
Well, I
say,
don't know
yeah,
about that.
let's do it. Let's
Yeah.
do
We
it.
can, like I said, we can put him on the tube. We play fair. We won't hurt anybody. You can hit golf balls off my dock. You've done that before, Joey. We'll
Yeah.
put a target out there for you. Joey still wants to hit that island, try to land one on that island. And one more time, I want to tell you what a wonderful job you guys do.
Thank you.
To have this in Northern New York and to have people hear some of the history of some of the things that are happening, some of the current stuff. Kudos to you guys. You're the best.
Well, Brad, we appreciate you coming on.
You bet.
There you go.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I mean,
Yeah.
and you just added to that. You just added to, if you're enjoying it, I guarantee you some other people are going to enjoy this because this one was different. To be able to hear, hear about a different sport that I don't think a lot of people knew what was going on. I had no idea about Nick Lufthauser in winning. That's amazing that he was a national champion living up here in the North Country in a summer sport. So really cool stuff, Brad, and we can't thank you enough for coming on.
You're welcome.
That's going to be it tonight here on ESS, Empire State Sports, the Wise Guys Sports Talk Show. For Joey Riom, Dave Bartlett, myself, Pete Goslaw, and our very special guest, Brad Smith. Good night, everybody, and stay safe.